Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Shreyanshi Bhatt and this is the lecture 2 of our CSE 101 playlist. So this lecture about how do computers work, it is basically a revision lecture of whatever things we have already learned in our school time about computers, okay? So this is going to be a quick refresher and we are not going to go deep into the topics, right? It is only a revision lecture so that our memory is refreshed about the things that we already know about computers. Okay, so let's dive right into it. Okay, so we all have heard about binary, bits and bytes. So let's quickly revise what these three terms mean. Okay, so binary is basically a system of two where these two numbers are 0 and 1. So we use 0 and 1 to represent all the data. So for example, if we want to represent the number 7 in binary, then we write it like 0111. And now how do we know that this is the correct representation? So basically how do we convert the binary to decimal? So that happens like this. So 0111. Let's suppose these are the indices 0, 1, 2, 3. We write it from right to left. Now what we do is that 2 raised to power 3 multiplied by this 0 plus 2 raised to power 2 multiplied by that 1 plus 2 raised to power 1 multiplied by this 1 and 2 raised to power 0 multiplied by this 1. The summation of this will come out to 7 and that is how we convert from binary to decimal. So what's a bit? 0 or 1? That's the basic unit of data. It is called a bit. Group of 8 bits is known as a byte. So this 7, if we want to represent it as a byte, so we write 0 0 0 0. We just append zeros in the left to make it of 8 bits and then just write this. Okay, so that is the representation of 7 in 8 bits, which is 1 byte. So but have you ever thought about that why do we represent it in binary only and not like some other numerical system? So this is because we all know, right, that digital electronic items use electrical circuits. So inside a computer there are a lot of electrical circuits, various gates, flip-flops and all of that. So in that it is either on or off. So let's say we assign 0 for off and 1 for on. The electrical circuit can only be in two states, right? It can be either on or off. There is no such thing like half on or half off, right? So that is why we use these two digits and use the binary system to represent the state of electrical circuits and work around to represent the data and use the computer. Okay. Okay, so let's now learn about the most essential unit of a computer, which is the CPU or the central processing unit. So if we assume that a computer is a human body, then CPU is the brain of the computer. Without a CPU, a computer is useless. So what does a CPU does? It performs calculations, executes instructions from programs, and also does a lot of other processing related things, okay, like processing instructions and all of that, memory management and all. Okay, so how does CPU does that? So these are the main components of a CPU. The ALU or the arithmetic logic unit, it performs the mathematical operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication and division. So what does a control unit does then? Control unit, just as the name suggests, it manages and directs operations data between components. So how does the data flow between these other components? All of that thing is controlled by the control unit. And what are these things? Registers. These are the very small high speed storages which are right inside the CPU. So as they are inside the CPU, the proximity is more, right? They are more closer to the CPU, which is why it is a high speed storage. And there are various registers like A, B, C pair, D, E. All of that will be taught to you in the COA playlist, which is the Computer Organization and Architecture. But this is a beginner's playlist, so it will not be taught in the CSE 101. This is just a quick revision of whatever we have learned already. Yeah, so these registers are used for immediate operations. So that's our CPU diagram. This is the main CPU block, that's our CU, that's our ALU. And what is this? This is the MU or the memory unit. So what's a primary memory? Primary memory is RAM, random access memory, and ROM, read-only memory. And what's the secondary memory? All the external device like HDDs, SSDs, and etc. Okay, and these are our input and output devices. And this flow of the data is what is managed by the CU. Okay, so let's talk about this term which is memory. So we all know, we just discussed that there are two types of memory, primary memory and secondary memory. So RAM and ROM are the primary memory. Now why do we call it primary memory? Is because it resides inside the computer, and the secondary memory is externally attached to the computer. So what is a RAM? Random access memory is a temporary storage for data that the CPU is currently using. Okay, it is super quick, but it is volatile, which means that when the power is turned off, the data will be lost. So it is only used for current ongoing operations. And what is this ROM? Read-only memory is a permanent storage that holds crucial data like BIOS, which is the basic input-output system. But it is non-volatile unlike RAM, so data is retained even when the computer is turned off. Now there are various types of RAM and ROM. So for RAM we have something called static RAM and dynamic RAM. And for the ROM we have this programmable ROM, electronically programmable ROM, and erasable ROM and electronically erasable ROM. Yeah. So as we discussed, computer memory, primary and secondary. Secondary are these external things, CD, floppy disk, magnetic tapes, SSDs, hard disk and all of that. So RAM and ROM are our primary memory, where ROM is non-volatile. Now static RAM is faster than dynamic RAM, but it is more expensive than dynamic RAM. And dynamic RAM is cheaper but slower, and it needs periodic refreshing because it uses capacitors. Now what is programmable ROM and erasable programmable ROM? So there is someone called a ROM engineer who basically designs, or like we can say programs, these read-only memories, and once it is programmed then we cannot erase it or modify it. So that's PROM. And what is EPROM? As the name suggests, it is erasable, so we can erase some parts of it, right? And what is this EEPROM? So that's electronically erasable programmable read-only memory. And what it does is that it uses electricity to basically erase the data on the memory. Okay, let's move on to the next topic. This is the most basic thing, we have been learning it since childhood. We all know what are keyboards, mouse, printers, speakers. They are our input and output devices, right? So input device is something that takes in the input from the user, and output devices gives back the output from the computer to the user. Now what is an operating system? Another super important part of a computer. It is a software which manages hardware and other softwares. Okay, so examples are Windows, Mac OS, Linux. So what are the functions of an OS? So OS basically is used for memory management, file management and process management. Now what is memory management? So memory management means it allocates RAM to running programs. Now these days the laptops and computers are really cool, right? It's not like we can only do one thing at a time. We can do multiple things at a time. Like right now, my PC is updating in the background and I'm teaching this lecture on Canva, right? So I'm using two different things at the same time. Now, how does the computer decides that to which program will it give the RAM, right? So that is memory management and that is decided by our operating system. And similarly, file management, like we all have this file manager on our systems, right? On our laptops and our phones, in which there is like a tree like hierarchical structure of storing the data. Like there can be a folder and inside there will be multiple files. So the managing of all these things on our device and even on external device, like if we connect a USB, to our laptop, then in that also we can see, right, that which files and folders are present. So all of that file management is also handled by the operating system. And what is process management? So a process is basically a running program which is like currently executing. So how do we decide that? Just like I gave an example that if multiple processes are running, so how do we decide that which will get the access to CPU? Because everybody needs some processing. So how does the computer decide that which will get the CPU access, which process will get it? So that is also done by the OS and there are various algorithms like first come, first serve, round robin, and other such algorithms which the OS uses to manage these processes. Okay, so this is our diagram. That's us. We are the human users who use the computers. These are the application softwares like VS Code, MS Excel, etc. Okay, this is our OS, which is basically the middleman who handles all of this and all of this. And these are the other system software like device drivers, firmwares, etc. That's the underlying hardware. Okay, let's move on. Yes, so that is it for today's lecture. I hope you liked it. Thank you so much for listening to me till the end. Please like, share and subscribe to make this beautiful grandma happy. Thank you so much again and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye bye.